So I thought I'd make a video. It's pretty early in the morning. It's 7 in the morning and been up for the last few hours. And just kind of venting and talking. And I was not venting, but I felt like talking and venting. And I was thinking, I was listening to this TLC, Digging on You, and I thought, and came across a few of the tracks of TLC, which I was very familiar with when I was younger. And I think I remember being in New York, and I saw one of the TLC girls working at Walgreens. I didn't say anything. I knew who it was, and I didn't say anything. I was just went to purchase something and then leaving. And one of the things that made me also think of this is when I was working at Cellstar, which is a cell phone company. I was 19 years old, which was one of the most difficult situations I had ever been, not just financially, but getting familiar with the world. And there was a guy that I remember this black guy that I used to work with for at least probably a month. Kept on. He talked a lot about TLC and how they gotten the worst record deal. He was a music producer. He was building his own record label, and he knew a lot about the business. Like, he knew a lot about record labels and stuff that I had no idea about. And telling me how, he used to have 3 or 4 women in his life, and he said he had, thousands of dollars, and he said he was making really good money, and he was with a bunch of his, he said that he was in a sort of rap group, like a hip-hop group of some kind, and he said that they were making, they were traveling like all expensive cars, and there was like 30 or 40 cars all, lined up following each other to like these events, and made it sound pretty glamorous and powerful. And he said he got addicted to cocaine and started doing a lot of cocaine, and he started selling drugs and selling cocaine until he went to jail for, I think, maybe 6 months or less than a year, but I think he went to jail for a couple of months. And I don't know what caused it. I don't remember what caused him to change his life, but he said he became a full Christian. And he was really deep into the Bible as he wasn't before. I was living right. He was telling me this many, many years ago. And at this point in my life, I was dressed in very rugged and poor. And it was such a difficult time for me. I was basically felt like a lost puppy thrown into a pit of snakes and just being eaten up, and always looking over my shoulder so intensely. And I think a lot of that had to do because you're being young, your vitality, your life is all in front of you. Your physical body is very wanting to move forward. But I remember he was a really nice guy. I thought I maybe saw him at Lawrence, Kansas one day, but he was, I remember him telling me he changed his entire life and was talking a lot about Jesus and God and a lot of scriptures and stuff. But he said he was doing a lot of cocaine, and he sounded like his nose started kind of sort of stuffy. Like he sounded like he maybe did a lot of cocaine. And I was thinking of that. And one of the conversations that I recall him having is him telling me, you have to be careful out there because there's people out there that are just out there for your money. They don't care anything about your life. It does come with the territory of the business of how record deals work, record labels work, but they're in it for themselves. And he says, for an example, I can tell you, and he was telling, and I don't recall remembering this. I heard maybe very lightly about it over the news before, but TLC had the worst record deal in like record history, where they went like triple platinum, which whatever that is, it's, I guess you consecutively sell, 100,000 records every period of time, and whatever, they own like these platinum they got these, they went like triple platinum or something like that, and they generated, he said they, I think if I remember correctly, he said they generated like 30, 40, 50 million dollars, like an outrageous amounts. And back then in those days, making those millions of dollars is an outrageous amount of money. And he said that they only made like 15 grand or like 50 grand for touring, and then the record label gave them like 60 grand. And they got like 10 to 20% of what they actually should have made. He says they went triple platinum, they traveled the world, they came #1 on the Billboard charts repeatedly for so much time. He says they walked out with everything, they were flat broke within several years. And they had to actually set up, I think he even telling me this, he said that they had to set up a charity event to try to support them, to try to be able to help them financially. They set up some sort of fundraiser because they had been ripped off so bad by the label and the music industry that they got paid hardly anything for it. They got, I mean, it was so ridiculously so bad. It was kind of like maybe something I can relate to is maybe like Scottie Pippen, which was on the Chicago Bulls many years ago. He had the worst record, basketball record deal in history, and compared to how he played and what team he played with. And but I do remember him telling me that many years ago. I can't remember exactly the financial money, exactly the numbers, but it was like an outrageous. Like he knew the numbers exactly how much money they, to an really close estimate of how much they should have made. And they walked it. They said like it was kind of one of those deals where like they'll pay you 10 grand and you're gonna make 20 million, and you just take the money because you need the money and you see it up front. And you don't know any better, and you're just signing contracts. And he says you have to be careful what you sign, because when you sign a contract and you sign these paperwork and you give that to them, then they own everything. And he said, and he told me, if I remember correctly, he said that they were still making and own the music that they were selling. They were making millions still after they had no attachments to them anymore. And you know, he was explaining to me and how you have to be careful what you sign and what you read, because, you know, they're in it for themselves. They don't care. He goes, they don't care. That's sort of the nature of the business, but you have to be careful and be able to read about what they're doing to you, because they'll own you for life. They'll own everything you have. And he was explaining that to me, and I think this is one of the reasons also that things to get in my life started to generate, where I started to think to myself, well, my mom's boyfriend was going to take all my dad's money, and, you know, or he took all my dad's money, and it, even though I was, no matter how much I tried to make me think of myself to try to let go, which was almost impossible at that time, is, you know, the idea that maybe I should keep trying to fight for my dad's money or wealth or protection of the things that he worked for very hard and suffered for, and he was left with nothing. And it was supposed to go for to my three brothers, me and my two other brothers, and my mother, which I, from the very beginning, 50% always goes to everything goes to my mother, 50%, but you know, this is some of the things that I talk about, like when he's telling me this, and it's not a vengeful thing, like, oh, you thanks for telling me, now I got more vengeful motivation. It wasn't that. It was understanding that how much things were being taken advantage of, and my mom having a first grade education. And I remember working on the conveying belt, and we're building where we were working on the conveying belt, building packaging cell phones we were doing like 4,000 phones a single day. You know, literally, there's it was repetitive, fast-paced work, and sometimes it would kind of slow it down, so we had time to talk to our coworkers. We're on the other side of the conveying belt in the warehouse, and kind of spacey, and him saying, this information did help have some motivation to that at that time. So, but I remember him saying, be careful what you sign, and what you don't know what's going on. And I think I may have said something like, well, they took all my dad's house and all these things, and he was left with nothing. And I think I remember him kind of looking over at somebody, at like George, who was, I think, a psychologist, and there was probably some other psychologists and other people that I believe who didn't actually work there. And I knew there were psychologists there. Not at that time. I questioned it with other workers before. I know it's really weird to be that young to try to figure that out, but I was having suspicions that there was, and I had no idea what attachments it could have been to. And he looked over and he goes like, and I think this is kind of maybe some of the triggering things that people were looking also into my father's financial situation. There was a few things that were looking into this, because I knew that it was, when you bring up $175,000, when you bring up $50,000 to an old man that doesn't know what's going on with his money and other people know about that, you're very likely to set up some sort of private investigation. It's very likely somebody else will. It's very likely, because people generally don't like someone young getting a whole lot of money very young, or someone getting free money just because it's free money. And this is not $10,000, $20,000. This is $50,000 of cash just sitting in a bank, that if most people that, especially working in a warehouse, that are all poor and thinking, well, I got to work for the rest of my life, and they're happy I'm not getting. Obviously, there's that sort of internal feeling people get and thoughts. But the idea that someone is doing it illegally and this old man doesn't know what's going on, and somebody just starts making decisions and you just scuffle the money and get away with it. People are going to prison, people are going to jail, and there's all these bad things. And here I am telling this information, as I never said in this information that it was likely to go under the rug, right? So it was very likely that I do remember that it was a possibility through word of mouth. People start talking and figured, hey, because at that time, GPS tracking and a lot of other systems weren't available as frequent they are now. People with cell phones with cameras and recording devices and whatnot, but at least to that during that time and situation, and I was making, was it $8 an hour? $8 an hour. I think when I left that company, I was maybe making $8.50. I think I don't even think it was $8.50. I started off making $7.50 an hour, and I think I was making $8 when I left, or I was just making $8 because I was working temp service the entire time. But yeah, and when he was telling me this, when he said that, I couldn't help but think to my father. I couldn't help but think to my father all this money was stolen. But they actually do remember. I do remember him telling me that they set up some sort of foundation or charity event to help TLC, because everyone knew that they had gotten ripped off, and they legally they did. They signed the paperwork. They didn't read what they were. They didn't read what they were signing. They needed the money, and they were from the hood. They were from poor, broke areas in life, and they're not the only people that this has happened to at that level of degree. But they're like the top 5 worst record deals of all time, where somebody came along and took everything they owned, and they were left flat broke. And he was telling me the ideas of how they approach you, where they'll pitch you ideas. We'll give you, we'll give you $40,000, $60,000, and they don't right now off the bat, and they have no idea, like, and then they go have no idea, and they're young, and these are old men that know how to take advantage of young people that are not financially educated to know how to handle their money, how to manage their money very well. So, yeah, explaining to me, triple platinum, walked out. When it was over, they were still making money off of them, and they couldn't do anything about it because legally they did sign, and they did sign over everything over to them. And it was such a robbing feeling. And I thought, when I did a comparison, I was like, whoa, they're doing this to the rich people, and they're doing this to these black folks, and nobody's able to, of all the people that know about it, are not able to. It's a huge war between record labels, and huge wars between who's smarter and who's intellectually, academically inclined to know how to protect yourself. And here I am, 19 years old, with $50,000, and my dad's complaining, and as a kid, always telling me, he never said, I want to give you this money, Hector. No, he said, I want to give you kids the money. He was like, I want to make sure you guys are taken care of. And there's no way to prove it. They don't trust me. They don't trust anything I had to say. Just listen to him when he's old and make a judgment and say, well, he could be lying. We just know what's best for the decision. And that's a very hurtful and very discriminating thing that they did. But at the end of the day, at the situation, I'm thinking to myself, well, geez, they did this to these people, and they set up a fundraiser to help these people. And there was people that helped TLC. And I think I do remember they did a house tour for one of the TLC people, one of the girls. I know Left Eye, I think they referred to this. I know she died in, I think, a plane crash, or if it wasn't a plane crash, a car wreck. Could have been a car wreck. I think it was a car wreck. Yeah, I think it was a car wreck or something. Because I remember there was footage on the internet, and it showed them with a home video camera inside their car, and it was like the last moments they were alive, or like the days before one of the girls passed away, which was one of the main singers. And even after that girl died, the record label didn't care, and nobody cared that they had basically moved and changed a lot of the music that people were listening to all around the world, and specifically in the U.S., and made all this money in touring and all this work and effort, and they get nothing for it. And it was their music they made. Yeah, I thought I'd bring that up, because I was thinking to myself at that time, that there was something that I always understood, even before the age of 19. Is that once I started bringing people into my life when I was about 15 years old into my house, and they knew that I came from a broken house, they knew that this house was going to go somewhere, and they knew my dad was old, and I knew that they didn't care about me. They just wanted to care about my resources. They didn't give a damn, and most of them didn't. And everybody's going through a hard time and young period of time, but when you lose your home, you lose everything. You can lose your turntables, you can lose your car, but if you lose a roof over your head, that is the ultimate losing of pretty much your stability of anything that's going to go in your life, because you can't depend somebody's going to just give you things, because we're always taught you work, you get on 401k, you put a retirement, you go to school, or you win the lottery, but nobody's just going to come and give you a bunch of money and feel sorry for you when there's so much suffering around the world. And this is where things end up getting very bad. Where I recall there was like an Eskimo looking lady, but I think she was like Philippine. Maybe she was from the Philippines. She was Asian, but I wasn't sure where she was where from. I think because I used to work in this warehouse where a lot of immigrants from other countries got jobs at. This is the companies where I worked at, where it was like people from like war-torn countries are the worst, and like they come from very bad upbringings. And like I think this person was like from Madagascar. It was like some weird place you don't ever hear of, like, wow, unique area. lady kind of she looked Asian, Eskimo, and she was telling me, oh, it's like, yeah, you have to be very careful. And she only worked for a couple of days, and she says that, she used to know a very beautiful woman that used to sing, had the ability to sing very well. And the jealousy that she told me that other people had is that there was a woman that used poison in her drink and didn't know, and it ruined her throat and her vocal cords, and she lost the ability to sing. And one of the ways that they did this, one of the antidotes to this poison, this lady told me that she filed down nails on a human, the file down of the nails, of the human nails, and turn them into sawdust, and put it in a drink and put some other chemicals in it, and it creates some sort of something in the throat and the vocal cords where it destroys your ability to sing. And they did this to this very famous, beautiful, beautiful singer, and she told me it was very sad. She said they used poison to do this to this person. And who knows if this person was an investigator, and it was weird because when this lady told me this, she seemed like a very emotional person, but the way that she expressed this story was like so very heartfelt, and she goes, oh gosh, I shouldn't have told you that. And I was standing right across from her, so slowly, just kind of working. Oh, hey, we're kind of just doing this. And when she said that, oh, I shouldn't have told you that, it seemed like I was being framed, or this person was pitching something at me that didn't make sense quite clear. And she looked over from a distance, oh, I shouldn't have told you that. And she looked over, like glancing toward the warehouse, and there was nothing there. Like she was given a signal direction of something else that was going on. And lady was very short, sort of dark complected Asian, Eskimo, dark complected looking, wore like a thick coat, like a winter Eskimo looking coat, and but I do remember hearing this, and worked there for a couple of days, and then I recall, and this is one of those disturbing things that I think, now that I come to think of it, why I think Julian's identical twin was placed with a transgender. And this is what happens. This is where I start to think that people are going to kill me or poison me, or they think I was going to do something. When I was working, there was a lady that worked there for like 3 days, and she was a heavy-set Mexican lady, but she was real light complected. Not real light complected. I remember sort of that she wore like a muumuu dress, which is an unusual type of dress that women wear, especially in that work environment, but she was allowed to for some reason that day. And this person could have been a transgender. They were built like a transgender. And when I was talking to this person, she told me that, yeah, my mother died, and when my mother died, I was very nice enough to go to. I was very nice enough to go to. I was very nice enough to go to the funeral at the funeral home, and I put all her makeup on her while she was dead. And she told me that she went into the funeral home and with the mortician, just her, and she brought all her makeup and she put all the makeup on her mother to make her mother look very pleasant in the casket. But I remember her saying this in a way that was like, the body language is what's telling me everything. And this lady was like, yeah, and I was doing this, and I put all her makeup on, and I made her look really beautiful, before she died. And does that, like sort of glancing like there's a bitterness, a rivalry. And this person was talking to me very like comforting, like, here, let me soothe you with this type of talking to sort of convey this comfort, like I'm a sweet person, but I'm gonna get that bitch Celestina. But she didn't say Celestina. This is why I think that there was a transgender in that group of people that were also being sent to work there that may have not known me to target me and target my mother. So this is one of the reasons that I believe that now it adds more even truth to everything that was going on with that specific situation, with my mother having her identical twins snatched from her. And I remember that lady telling me that the poison that she used on her fingernails that filed down, and a few other poisons that you used to take somebody's vocal cords away, and the way that she said, "Oh, I shouldn't have told you that." And this lady was about 30. She was like 35 years old, 30 to 35. Maybe she wasn't 40. She was anywhere between 30 to 40 years old, but I would say she was 35 years old. I would say about 35 years old. And I was 19. And, you know, that was like red flags to me when that person, the way that she said. And it's crazy because this person doesn't know how to speak English all that great. And they sound very foreign. So why would you behave like that working in a warehouse and then pretend and then gone within, you know, less than a week? So anyway, and I think it's important for me to talk about this because this is one of the reasons that I also now have to come to terms of it, that I speak of it, that they were after my mother's twin because someone bought my mother a house or was doing a surprise or whatever, and he took the twin, and that's what happened. And then they went after me many years later. So they were doing this at Cellstar in Carrollton, Texas, when I was working there. And it's right over like a mile down the road from Beltline Road and Looney in Carrollton, Texas. And it was just a very dangerous situation where it really doesn't matter anymore, because no matter how much suffering they did to my mother and they gave her the money, the people that were spending the money did it on purpose with inside behavior to retaliate against me, because they were all homosexuals and transgenders. And even though I don't know what's going on and my mom doesn't, they feel empathetic for the transgenders and gays that were involved in that. That's what they did. But I do remember that lady specifically telling me, she said that she put the makeup on this lady, on her mother, when she died. And she sounded like, when she said that, she was like, yeah, I did that, yeah. So if this person was, and this lady was like, she was like in her late 40s. She was like in her she was about 45 years old to about 50 years old. And I remember she was heavy set. She didn't look like she worked out. She looked like a mother, a sort of a moo-moo mother figure. You ever seen those types of ladies wear moo-moos and kind of overweight, like they're just motherly, like grandmas type of personas and stuff? Well, this person was about 45 to 50 years old, I'm going to say. And I remember them working in a warehouse, and I had conversations about what struggle of life is, and this person then retracted very quietly about not just trying to figure me out, but that's kind of what my mother sort of behaves like. Oh, like yeah. And my mother would sort of tilt her head like this and do this. And the reason that she does this is because somebody else can mimic that behavior. Because if you see this all the time with actors. You see this all the time with actors. Actors always, and not just actors, if you watch all the interviews and you watch how people try to figure out another human being, they go through every situation to try to copy that person. Like they try to do the physical labor, they try the movement, the expressions, the talks, the repetitive habits that they do to try to channel that person and then figure them out and then reflect that in a mirror and then know how to shoot directly to go at that enemy. And that's what they're doing. You watch, Kelly and Reverb, or, Kelly Ripa, you watch, so many people out there, every person nearly, so many other people do that. You watch actors who do the same thing to try to channel what's their next move. and they'll try to jump into the shoes of that human being mentally to then try to figure that person out and say, I know what their next move is going to be, like a detective. And so, but they're actors, and some people are really good at acting. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because I remember this very distinctively. And working at Cellstar, and we're working in a warehouse, and one of the things that they had us do, like when I worked there for 8 months, and I worked in this one building for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and then the last 3 months they had us, after working there for about 4 or 5 months, yeah, it was about 4 months, they moved us and said, okay, well, all you, Hector, and some other people, you got to go to the other building, the other warehouse. It's on the other side. It's about it's not even a quarter of a mile. It's down the street, 2 streets over and around the corner. Yada yada. It's another warehouse. We have material there, and so I go over there and we work there for we're working 12 hours a day, 6 p.m. until 6 in the morning. $8 an hour. It's brutal work. Brutal. Standing on your feet with only 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch. By the time 15 minutes on the dot, and they were not leveraged on take. I mean, if you were 3 to 5 minutes late, they got pissed. And it was like brutal work. It was brutal. And by the time I'm standing there and break starts, by the time I go and sit down in the break room, 5 minutes it takes me to get to the break room and come back to my exact position in 15 minutes. From the minute you're standing, 15 minutes break starts, to the minute you have to be back in your position in 15 minutes. So you only have really 10 minutes. And I remember being so exhausted at this time. This is when I had a plastic anemia and I was bleeding from my nose, and I'd go to the bathroom. I don't know why my nose would start bleeding. It was so heavily. I couldn't figure out. I was like, hey, my blood is so thin. It was like water. And I was like, why? I hadn't done drugs or anything. And I was just like, and I don't know if it was stress. And I had actually been on that conveyor belt. My nose just would start bleeding. And I got to go to the restroom, and I wouldn't know why. And it was humid, it was dirty and dusty. Working in that area, they had fans, no AC. It was hot. It was just bad conditions for very low amounts of money. That black guy worked there for about a month and then left. And I never heard from this guy again. And he said he had 3 or 4 cars. The guy said he was working on a record deal. But this lady that talked about that she buried her mother, this is what this lady told me. This lady said that she goes, yeah, I buried my mother. He goes, yeah, and I put makeup on her. Yeah, it was very sad. We had to pay for the funeral. Like this, she said that she put the makeup on, but I'm trying to remember if she said that she paid for the funeral or she had hard time paying for the funeral. And she was acting empathetic because when she was talking, she's like, yeah, I put makeup on her, and yeah, he goes, and we had a hard time paying for the funeral too. Yeah, I was really close to my mom. And so this is the behavior that she's doing as we're working. She worked in a little bit slower area too, on the other side of the conveyor belt. It's one long conveyor belt, and everyone's lined up, and there's like one person, there's like another 10 feet, there's another person, another 10 feet, there's another person, another 20 feet, there's 2 more people at the bottom, at the end of the conveyor belt, stacking the material on top of a pallet. And so I think it's important for me to talk about. I think that lady was making threats about my mother. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know how long this has been going on, but this is where it started, because if Julian's identical twin, if there's 3 of them I don't know about, but if I know Julian's identical twin, it's all going to determine where this lady came from. Where this lady came from. Because, I mean, who took care of Julian's twin? If this person was a transgender, because my mother, I talked about that I was inside, I was in the hospital when Julian got snatched. I was with my dad and I was with Frankie. And my dad questioned it too. And my dad was just like, "Oh, look, we got a baby." And I was acting very stubborn. I talked about the story of baby being stolen out of the room. I talked about this so many times. Gave it to Lucio. So I don't know who he gave his baby to. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because there was a lady that she looked a lot. She kind of like my mother. She was heavy set though. She looked kind of masculine. She could have been a transgender, but she was sort of heavy set. She didn't look like she particularly took care of herself all that great, and didn't put a whole lot of makeup on herself. She had her same hairstyle as my mother, and she had like a light orange brown colored hair like my mother, and she had her hair set up like my mother. But you have to understand that this person is showing up, behaving. So when they show up and they know that I'm there, they may try to behave exactly like my mother, because that's what transgenders do. Transgenders always try to make the mockery of another person who they're not. They generally, even if they want to live like females, they live like a female, but then they'll make the impersonations. Instead of being their own version of who they are, they try to copy of someone else. It's very weird. To me, it's kind of sickening. But when you're taking somebody's child away from a transgender and you're giving sorriness to Celestina, my mother, and you're not giving it to this transgender because of what they did, they want to be able to grasp that emotion, how I convey myself emotionally. How is it because everything you see on the physical outside and my body language and skin color and hair color, that is what you're going to see in everything. And you're going to put that in your mind first. Everything is going to go in your mind first that way. And then you start doing physical body language, you start doing tactics to try to map out that person and put them in the mental state of where you want to place them. And you get better at that as you get older. And when someone is 45 years old doing this to a 19-year-old, they're very good at it. Now, you just can't give money away to people. I don't think this lady's probably alive anymore. But I wanted to say this. I know that there's a way that you can figure out where people worked 50 years ago. People are able to look up the track records from 100 years ago in slavery, 300 years ago in slavery. How, you ever seen Ancestry? Where on Ancestry.com or whatever, they had do these special interviews with celebrities. They figured out their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was like a president in Peru or some crazy shit. And they figured out where they came from to the United States and stuff like that. And it was like, this is over 100 years ago, and they can track that down through documents. This person, I know they can track down at Cellstar, the companies, the taxes. They can figure out where they worked and how many hours they worked there and what period of time exactly they worked there. So I think it's important because you can track these people down still to this day. But I remember that lady telling me that, saying she was like, yeah, I put the makeup on my mother when she died. And I began to tell this lady, goes, yeah, I don't get along with my mother. She took all the money and she stole everything. And I remember this lady, she was very quiet and was like just waiting for me to talk. Like, just put that person there. Yeah, just keep talking because you're just gathering information. Gathering information, and this is what this person's body language very much like. But I knew they were acting sort of sympathetic toward me, sort of sympathetic, like this child, this 19-year-old young kid needs sort of this emotion of empathy. Because I looked very rugged. I looked like a the way I looked like I was skinny. I looked very worn and torn. Mismatching mismatching clothes and shit. That, I was skinny. I looked frail. I was really pale in my face. And one of the things that I want to say, I think I remember, because she was working at the end of when she told me that she was working at the end of the conveying belt. When I told her that she worked there only for like no more than a whole week, 3 days. But when she said that, she then body language begins to show like comfort. Like, yeah, I know she was a bitch the whole time. So this is why I believe this, because within a couple of hours or the next day, I think it was the next day or maybe a couple of hours, she's working on the conveying belt. And this is hard work. This is 8 hours a day, but they slowed down the conveying belt this day, and it's going really slow, so you have time to sort of just move a little bit and have talk, because you want to be able to talk with your workers and keep the sort of life kind of going, and not just so much processing. So you try to have some kind of conversation about life. And I'm 19. Most of these people, all of them are older than me. All of them, at least by 5 to 7 years. All of them. And but when the next day, this lady is working at the conveyor belt, and she's sort of working. And I remember she grabbed like the box of phones that was there, and she goes. And when she grabbed the box and she threw it on the pallet, it was aggressively. She threw it in an aggressive manner that expressed bitterness. And she kind of like expressed in like. So there were two things that there was one thing that I thought of. Life sucks. I'm bitterness inside, and she just talked about her dead mother and how everyone's broken poor. And now that I come to think of it, now I'm thinking, second option, because you gave my mother money and she knows about it, and they're coming after me. I'm 19 fucking years old. I have no fucking idea. So, this is the lady that told me she put the makeup on her mother when she died. And I don't know if I asked her if she had kids. And I know that I would have asked her that. I want to think I did say that. I said, do you have any kids? Or she said, yeah, I have. She wasn't single. She said, I think she had one kid. At least one kid. But you got to understand that this person is very much doing that. Very much. I think this person was after because Julian's identical twin. So I think it's important for me to talk about this because, I believe it was in a big investigation ring about what was going on because, 9/11 just happened, the war was going on, they had just arrived in Iraq and there was a big shootout war. They were blasting over the radios and stations. They had special radios that you can listen to and you can hear the gunshots and they were live on battlefields and shit. And, but, I'm thinking to myself, if there was a big investigation ring of what was going on and what was happening, if there's a big investigation into things that were going on, the only way that I think you could do this is if both parties don't understand, or if one person doesn't understand that this person is connected to you and you don't know anything about the twins, then go ahead and put that person that stole my mother's twin and taking care of that child, go put them over there, someone that's connected in Garland, go put them over there with Hector and let them talk. And then turn on the radio and see if there's anything you can find out. Just let them talk. Keep everyone safe, but just let them talk. Because when you do that, you're able to figure out whether this person may want to kill you or do something to you or go after your mother. Because these are baby snatchers. These are transgenders that are doing this. Gays that are doing this. But if I have anything to say with it, my mother's baby got snatched. Without a doubt. You don't separate identical twins just by... I'm telling you, I know my father. My father would have not said, get the fuck out of my house, you had twins. My father would have probably been like, damn, this is how I see my father. I think he would have been like, dang, oh, I mean, 2 kids, 2 baby kids, I think he would have been for 2, but he would have not get out the fucking house, separate the twins. He wouldn't have. That's my opinion. You can believe it. I don't think he would have. I just know he would have. He just wouldn't have. Because the way that when we saw the first child, Jillian, my father was like, because he saw me, I hit the bed, and my dad got pissed. He goes, no, it's the baby. He goes, calm down, and I said this because I was saying, who's that other kid? Because I hit the bed of my mom. I said, who's that baby? Who's that baby? Huh? And I hit the bed, and when my dad looked over, my mother looked at me and goes like this, and Frankie's just looking, and he does this. And then he's just standing there, and he's standing at the foot of my mother's bed, and it's kind of dark in the room. There's not many lights in the room. It's like very dim, very dim. It's almost like the same dimness I have in my room when I just have one light on. When I have my lamp light on, that's it. It's very dim in there in the room. There isn't lights in the room. The ceiling of the lights, it's just very dim in the room, very dim. I want to say that the roof, the ceilings of either went out. The light bulbs on the ceiling went out, or they weren't even on. And they weren't even on. So I thought I would say something about that. So Lucy may be able to verify that, to tell you if he walked out the baby, he turned off the lights because then he puts my mother to sleep with the baby. So it would have been a common behavior and act to do as you're walking out. So you'll find that answer out right there. You can verify that. But the lights in the room when we went were off. Or not off, but there was like another light somewhere on one of the other side. It was a room like similar to this size, a little bit bigger than this, but one of the fluorescent bulbs at the very end of the room was probably on, and then there was like a curtain, and then there was like the two fluorescent lights over here were off, and maybe there was like a dim one, sort of just very, very dim, but it was a very dark room. It was pretty dark. It was just dim. I wouldn't say dark, but very dim. And I don't, knowing my mother, I don't know what the psychologists have to say about that. The baby's being stolen, and my sister dying, and I don't even know where this little girl was. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the circumstances that what the fuck shooting at me. So I think it's important for me to talk about, and it was very weird that I talk about this because Robert Girardi had not died yet. I never heard about this, and I still don't know about this. If Robert Girardi ever knew anything about celebrities or went on a car ride, I don't know anything about this to this very day. I just know that this guy was telling me. He goes, yeah, it was like, man, just like a year ago or 2 years, like several years ago, we went with some celebrities, and this is the black guy record deal telling me about TLC. He goes, yeah. He goes, he goes, yeah, we were riding we were mobbing deep, like 30, 40 cars, all nice cars, all fabulous and high life looking. He goes, going to concerts and shit like that. And he goes, it was really cool and stuff like that, but he told me that he lost his path in life and he was recovering. He was like 27 years old at the time, or 28 years old, close to 30, maybe even early 30s, but he was in his late 20s for sure, about 30 years old. And I was 19, and he said he had changed his life reading the Bible. And he goes, I go to church. I read the Bible a lot, and this particular person seemed very authentic to me when he said he believed in Jesus. He seemed like a thug. He seemed like the thug personality person that was genuinely a Christian. He really did. He took like a thug. You ever met some of them where they were real bad, and he was a thug, and he said he wasn't particularly the best person in life. And he had all this money, he was selling cocaine, and so I thought I would say that because he said they were mobbing deep. And I'm 19 years old, and there was like 30 or 40 cars, and they were all, sort of living this high life and had plenty of money and anything, this sort of legacy of hip hop that you think about, having money and a lot of group of people, and you're this sort of mob of mafia people that are paving through a road where nobody gives you opportunities, and you created something for yourself because the whites own everything and the rich people own everything and they control everything. But I thought it was important for me to talk about. I still remember that, when I think that lady, she dropped, like, this lady's behaving very like this, like my mother, like, oh, see, yeah, and so this behavior is very close to what my mother is. This person, I think, is making mockery of my mother. For her to grab a box and the way that her persona is to how she grabbed the box, she threw it on the ground, she did it in an aggressive way that she was not necessarily just thinking maybe about her own, like, oh, my mother died, and that just kind of bring up bad memories. It was like, yeah, you fucking bitch, let me give you that. And then that's what she did. So that behavior does not match up with what I saw. So this is why I think that this person is connected to the identical twins, who was that group of people that were involved in that, because they were coming after me and they were going to go after my mother. Because I told this lady, 100%, I told this lady, I said, yeah, he goes, I know how you feel. He goes, my mother took everything away, her and her boyfriend, and as soon as I say boyfriend, she kind of goes like there's a shudder, like there's like a shift of attitude or energy or something, like something triggered. But I do recall that when I'm looking at this lady is, I tell her and I say, yeah, she took $50,000 and I don't have anything, took my dad's house and I'm left with nothing, and you could tell she's listening to this, but I didn't talk to her again. I just had this sort of very comfortable talk with her for about a couple of hours, or an hour at least an hour. Because you're walking, you're just talking about things in life, and but this lady looked masculine. She didn't look like she particularly took care of herself all that great. She had a muumuu dress on, and she looked kind of dyke butch, but she put her hair up like my mother's, and she sort of colored her hair like my mother's. And the reason I want to say is my mom has sort of like a reddish, like red hair, kind of like brown and reddish. My mother used to color her hair for like that for a very long time. And I thought it was important for me to talk about, because the way that you want to copy that person because someone's giving you money is what you'll do when you go and meet up with Hector. And this is when they come at me. So I think it's important for me to talk about. They could figure out who these people were, but nonetheless, it's too late. I'm 41 years old. A lot of these people are not alive, and whatever you gave these people and whatever they stole, there's some pretty tough situations with this particular. And I'd say tough because there's no retaliation. The number one person they took out of the picture was me. I was the absolute gold mine. Not just because of the Michael Jackson. I am the truth. I am the truth. And that could see and saw everything they could have told you in the great elaboration that I am now in all these hundreds of videos that I've made many years ago. They were so frightened and wanted to control the situation, and their psychology method does not work. Their detective method does not work. In this particular situation, it is important because, see, this is what they're faulted in. People like me fear God and want to go to heaven and feel that we have to do good into this life because there's a deep-rooted fear in God, that you feel emotional toward God. And so when you're very, I say, sensing the detailed in this particular situation, I believe that it surpasses the detective and all this other shit, because the detective, and you're in it for your own gain. Remember that. I am the truth. It's going to mess up your chess pieces so vigorously. It's like truth is very eternal. Lies are very short-comed. Truth is eternal, and it's everlasting truth. It's very deep rooted. As lies are very short lived and scattered, and the senses of it, and it travels faster. It travels faster, but it does not. You get to the point, right? You get the point. But I think it's important for me to say this because, I think the detectives and the other personnel did a horrible job, in my opinion, because even though I talked aggressive and talk crazy, I talk crazy and aggressive times because I have to defend and protect myself, that I'm willing to do ruthless and crazy shit because you don't think I'm capable of doing that. But you already have in your mind that you think I'm capable and willing to do that, and I am that, and that's not the truth. Because once you go into a person and make them look like an enemy, and you think they're an enemy, and they're really not, they're more than that, it conveys that persona and what people view that person. And the way that I grew up fits right into the perfect lines of shit. We got to block Hector because the people that are older and smarter, they knew how to manipulate me and shoot me down. Because my mother has a first grade education. It does not matter what anyone else thinks. If that brain is not functional at a full capacity at what it's capable of, other than just, here, let me just put crackers in your mouth. Here, let me just give you money, stupid. Or you see, just your pussy gives children that, and then that's love, and then that's love, and then you just bullshit. You got that brain under your authority. You know that you can dominate that brain like that very quickly. Very easy to read, very easy to placement, the way that Ken and Sarah put her there. Especially now that you're having more children being broken down. By the time I'm 19 years old, my mother's not had a mark or just now born into the world. So I think it's important to sort of talk about this because when you talk about this is why I talk about that they feared me so much that they had to come kill me, do as much as harm, put the pressure, lie to him, poison him. Now tell him this so that he sabotages himself. You see, Ken Cooper's a hero. We don't know what's going to go. Oh, it's just, white power. Oh, racism isn't a problem until it is now. No, wait, hold on. Time's gone. Remember Jesus? It's always give me. That's what it is. And they never fulfill their taste. Selfish and greed, and it's boiled down to, some people do it for secrecy in their lives, so homosexuality, and they're willing to kill you for it. But it's just a deep-rooted, eternal, violation, in my opinion, But I think it's important for me to talk about. And other than that, I hope this feeds into some information to help. But I know start off with the conversation so people don't understand. People are very shocked that I still remember these conversations I had at 19 years old with some of these people. Thought I'd talk about that, and I think that lady was there because I remember the attitude that she got wasn't necessarily directed at me, because I can remember being there and I remember this, looking at this lady, and she was throwing the box, and then back to her nice situation. Yeah, I'm gonna act nice to get at Hector, and then I'm gonna just do this. Bitterness at life. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. But she didn't make eye contact when she did this. Okay, keep in mind, when she does this, she's not making eye contact with me. She's thinking to herself. but you know, and I think it's important for me to say this. You make your judgments. Doesn't change, it's too late.